course to the core. Everyone would have to agree from all of the colleges that that course was appropriate for the core, and then it would go in. This process requires only the approval of a college, its president, and the chancellor. So what are the criteria that are part of this process? Criteria number one is the big one. So the coordinating board has defined the core curriculum, and it has outlined requirements that it needs to see met in order for it to approve. They are the final approvers, right? So approval at our level, at the college level, just gets the core on the submission to the coordinating board. Then we have a whole list. We have a joint submission for all of the Alamo colleges that goes to the coordinating board, and then they take a look at all of those courses with the documentation, and they say yes or no to each one of them. They allow us to have our own criteria, but all they worry about is the coordinating board criteria, which when you're putting the course together and all the documents, this is the heavy lift right here. We, the Alamo colleges, also required that the course be transferable and applicable to a program at a transfer institution. So for example, if you had a tag, it would be in one of the tags, or if it's not yet in a tag, then you can demonstrate that it can be transferred and applied to a program at another college. So it has to be transferable. And then finally, and this is the purview of the president and the chancellor. So when the president and the chancellor review the proposal, they don't have any say over the nature of the curriculum. They don't have any say over this transfer and applicability, because basically that either is present or not. But they can say no to the proposal if they feel the course doesn't address the college mission, which I can't imagine how that would occur. And they can also say no if they feel the course can't be offered based upon its cost. I don't think that would rear its head very often, but I'm thinking there's possibly equipment associated with the course, or some aspect of the course which is a cost. Maybe the faculty is so. Yeah, I don't think so. It's not going to be likely that your course is going to bump into budgetary limitations, but we put it in there. So those are the criteria. What we're going to talk about today is the state requirement. So the process for adding the course to the core curriculum, here's what the faculty members will be doing. So at any given college, a faculty member says, I've got an idea for a course that should be added to the core curriculum. They discuss that notion with their colleagues in that discipline. And if they decide to go ahead and make the proposal, then they prepare the paperwork, the documentation. Don't worry about the cover sheet. That's just what course is it. You have to prepare the documents that are required by the coordinating board, which we'll go into in some detail right now this afternoon. Can it be transferred and applied to a program at another college? And then you need to make some statement about alignment with the college mission, and you make some statement about impact on budgeting. All very simple and straightforward. What happens in the process then is that it goes through our curriculum process, which is basically you fill out the documents, you get the approval of the chair, it goes to the curriculum committee. The curriculum committee reviews the proposal. If they approve, the proposal goes to the president and to the chancellor, and they consider only these two aspects, mission and budget. And then once that's done, the faculty work is already over. As soon as it goes to the curriculum committee, the work of the faculty members is done. But once the chancellor and the president approve, it goes on to the Alamo College's joint submission to the coordinating board, and we send it off, cross our fingers, and hope that they approve. Yes, Sarah.
And this is just purely a question. Is it recommended that documentation that other colleges also have it as part of their core, community colleges in Texas? Would that be beneficial?
You know what? I was thinking about that too, and I seem to remember that used to be part of the documentation in the past, but it's not required it's not required by us. It's not required by the president or the chancellor, and it's not required by the coordinating board that there be such evidence. They don't care if you are the only person who wants to have this in this core. However, when you look at what they talk about in the documents they'd like to see, they do open the door and they say any other document. They talk about this when they say, give us your syllabus. Any other document that you feel would be relevant to your argument can be included. And I would not hesitate to include that evidence, although they caution also that what you have to demonstrate is the way that the course is taught at your institution meets all the requirements, which may not be the way that it's taught at a different institution. So you really have to make your argument clear. Okay, and that's really it. We submit it to the coordinating board and they make their decision. This procedure just goes on to say, how do you get rid of a course from the core? Basically, if it ever fails to meet any of the 3 requirements, then you can recommend that it be removed. And then we had to address reinstatement. I mean, the procedure just went on. And so this was our easy out for reinstatement. It's the same as adding it. So we got out of that. And this has been approved by the SLT after many, many iterations. But I'll try not to belabor the time that it took to get this through. Okay, so let's go on. If you wanted, so we can submit to change our core curriculum once every year. The deadline every year is now June 1. They changed this recently, the coordinating board. So we're really close to June 1. Basically, if you had something in mind that you wanted to get into the submission by June 1 for this year, you'd have to get your documents together in the next month. It has to go through the curriculum committee, and we can wait as long as we need, but basically the curriculum committee has to meet before faculty leave for the summer. So in a general way, you'd want to have the documentation submitted to the curriculum committee by the end of April. So you're looking at during April, you're going to create the documents. And if you want to have a team session to review the content or to discuss what you've got and to look for other things that might be added, we can set that up. And then I talked to Zach with the AC, and the only thing we have to do with the AC is give them notification. So notification can come late, he says. It doesn't require approval, but we do have to get it to the president and the chancellor once it gets out of the curriculum committee. So just to make it, the short end of the story is April, but you can put the documentation together. Yes, Sarah.
Sorry, just timeline-wise, it's not going to hurt if our Physics 1402 is known as General Physics 2 rather than College Physics 2, right? Meaning I don't have to go through that whole curricular process to get the name changed first before we submit it to the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board?
I don't
Okay.
think so.
Okay. Because I really would like to.
Although, yeah, I'm I'm just thinking about it. Well, I would go ahead and submit with the name that we've got. After all, UTSA doesn't use the names of the courses as listed in the coordinating board, so as listed in the ACGM. So we'll just submit as is.
I really would like to get this through.
Done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
let's
you.
Make a run. Okay.
This document, it looks familiar. You've emailed it before, right? It's in one of my many emails somewhere.
The procedure?
Yes, this one right here.
Probably so.
Okay, I'll look for it.
It's been around. But I will, all of these documents that you'll see here this afternoon will be available. And I can resend the whole batch. And Julie will have a stash for these documents. And then I'm talking to Dora too about getting all of them available through Alamo Share somehow so that you can always find them. Okay. So timeline. All right. That's it for this academic year. You can always do it for the following year. Okay, so I thought we would take a look at what's currently in our core just to remind ourselves of what is the core composed. So I'm looking at the current catalog. So here are the component areas, right? So we have communication, which only has these 3 courses in it. We have the mathematics component area. So when you have a course, you're going to choose one of these component areas. Here are the math courses. There is the life and physical science courses. You get to choose 2. And so you see biology, chemistry, geography, geology, and here are the physics, general 1. So I think general 2 ought to be a snap, right? Because we have university physics 1 and university physics 2 as well. There is the 40s area, language, philosophy, and culture. And what have we got approved for this already? So the literature courses, World Civ 1 and 2, humanities, Introduction to Mexican American Studies, world cultures, and look at the language, intermediate Latin 1 and 2. And I remember the argument about languages was that the introductory languages were too skills-based, where the intermediate level talked more about culture associated with that language. So philosophy, world religions, logic, ethics, and then again, intermediate Spanish 1 and 2. If you wanted to get into the creative arts core, art appreciation, art history surveys, dance appreciation, theater appreciation, Mexican American fine arts appreciation, music, and American music course. All approved, right, by the coordinating board to be in this area. American history, it's choose 2 courses, so it's lots of options. So United States history, Mexican American 1 and 2, a combination of that, a combination in this way, African American history combined with United States history, African American, Mexican American history. You notice it's 1 and 2. They didn't do 1 and 1. Texas history, and choose one of these. Political science is fixed. Federal government, thus far at any rate, Texas government. Social and behavioral sciences, 1 course. What are the options? What fits in there? It's been approved by the board already. Mass comm, criminal justice, that's interesting. The economics courses are in there. Geography, political science. Look at this, foundations of kinesiology, drug use and abuse, general psych, human sexuality, psych, and sociology. And then the 90s component, you won't be thinking about as you propose a course for the core. Your course for the core has to fit into one of those 8 component areas. To be in the 90s area, you already have to have been in the core. So you'll think of the first 8. So that's what we've got. All right.
Can you clarify that? So to be in the 90, because I just so happen to be looking at, and just as a guide for me to help, for inspiration,
Okay.
look at other colleges 90, and I see, like, for example, BCIS 1305 business computer applications. So, but you're saying that to be in the 90, it must already be in there. Now, can courses in the 90, because I noticed that some of the speech courses for other community colleges are in 10. Can you speak to that, please?
I believe, and so I will confirm, Joseph, because the 90s area, I believe there's a statement, and I didn't look at it before this session, which I probably should have done, but I will check. I believe they say to be whatever the university decides to put into the 90s component area, each course has to be able to fit into one of the other component areas, 10 through 80. In fact, hang on one second. Let me see if I have a definition right here in front of me. One second. Let me see if I've got it. That didn't go here. Component area option. I'm reading it off this coordinating board chart. Maybe we do have some options. A minimum of, so you get 6 hours out of this. A minimum of 3 must meet the definition and core objectives for one of the foundational component areas. So at least 3. And then it says an option for up to 3 semester credit hours. The institution may select courses that meet the definition specified for one or more of the foundational component areas and include a minimum of 3 core objectives, which must include critical thinking, communication, and one of the remaining, depending upon the institution's choice. So it looks like in either case, you have to meet the definition as specified for one or more of the foundational component areas. So it has to meet the definition for one of those areas, 10 through 80.
10 through 80. Now, can any of the courses that are in the 90 be moved to like an 80? Because as an example, I'm looking at the core curriculum for Texas A&M College Station, and interpersonal communication, which is a 90 for us, it's in their 80 for social and behavioral sciences. And for other colleges, the other universities, they have like speech, for example, in the 10. So I'm just curious, should the speech faculty even consider moving what's in the 90 to, for example, like public speaking to the 10 and interpersonal communication to the 80? Just curious.
So since it has to meet the definition of a component area, any course that's in the 90 should fit, right? Could be moved to that component area because it must fit at least one. The only other issue that may arise is if you have included courses in your 90s area that meet the definition of a foundational component area, but only address 3 core objectives. And for that component area, there are 4 that are required. You wouldn't make it into that component area because you would be missing one of the objectives.
Okay.
But
and
if
I
it's
guess,
not, yeah.
And I guess just for the 90s, since there's more limited options, it might be best to stay in the 90. So that's something that, perhaps the speech faculty can discuss more in depth.
You can talk about it. The more courses there are in that particular component area, the likelihood of someone choosing your course, right, goes down because the options are so broad. So if you got yourself into a component area that only had 6 courses in it, then the likelihood of being a course chosen by a student goes up. There has been an argument posed that we change the definition of our component area to enlarge it, because we have courses that are required by tags that are core curriculum at the receiving institution, but not core curriculum for us. So they have to be taken as an elective if they're transferred over as an elective from us. But if they were in our core, if we enlarged our 90 in such a way to allow that to be included, then it's better for the transfer outcomes. But anyway, the question about 90 will come before us. We'll be talking about that. Julie?
Yeah, I have a question about the core objectives for the 90s. We have our first, the speech courses are listed as additional communication. So I've been moving forward as if they meet the objectives required by Area 10. And there are 4 of those. That's correct, right? Because
yes.
You also said 90s only have to meet communication, critical thinking, and 1 other one.
So I'll have to look at, it's a good question. I'll have to look at exactly how we, and I think it's defined the same way across all the colleges, defined our 90s component area. We could allow 3 credit hours to have only 3 core objectives met. We could have allowed that, but we didn't have to allow that. We could have required that all of the 6 areas, 6 credit hours, meet all of the objectives required for their component area. And you know what? I don't know that we were that specific in our definition of the 90s area.
Yeah,
So
same with the language,
question.
philosophy, and culture. I've been treating that with the same as Area 40. And that one also has 4 objectives.
Yes. So 4 objectives for language, philosophy, and culture, and American history, and government and political science, and social and behavioral science.
Yes. I'm looking at,
I'm
I'll put the chart in the chat.
Life and physical science, yes, has 4 also.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Shall we go on? All right, let's go. So that's what our core looks like. Good questions. It's funny how you think you know everything there is to know about the core, and then somebody asks a question and you go, I wonder what the answer to that is. So I want to pull up and share with you. I'm going to have to stop sharing a moment. I'm going to show you the form that is used to submit all of your documents. So you see what it looks like. You will use this form when you submit your proposal to the curriculum committee, and when your proposal goes to the AC, and when it's submitted to the coordinating board. So let me pull that up real quick. I'm going to stop sharing, and I will share again. Let me see. Here we go. Okay, can you see this thing rolling up and down? This is a form created by Zach for submitting a proposal for the core. So here's section A, right? Very simple. The subject number and title, what college is submitting, select your component area, and provide a name, point of contact. Section B has 3 parts to it, and this is where most of the work will go. 1, and these are all of the coordinating board requirements. 1 is that you have to provide a syllabus. 2, you have to document specifically how your course addresses each of its required course objectives, how it addresses each of its required ILOs. Now, you may already have a good sense of this for your course. We've been doing ILOs for a long time now, but you want to be very specific, assignment by assignment. They want to see it addressed throughout the conduct of the course. And then part 3 is that you need to argue that the course addresses both parts of the component area definition. So every component area has a 2-part definition, and you just demonstrate that the curriculum for the course addresses those 2 areas. And then once you've done that, the rest of it is very simple. Section C, you demonstrate that it can be transferred and applied to a program. Section D, you say, yes, this course aligns with the college mission. And section E, you say this course will have no significant additional budgetary impact unless you've got a course for which that's not true. And then you're done. So that's the form. So what we're going to do now is just take a look at the heavy lift, which is basically, you're going to want to put the syllabus together. It needs to be detailed, but the requirements for the syllabus are pretty straightforward. The heavy lift is going to be addressing specifically in concrete terms how your course addresses the core objectives, and then again, how your course addresses the component area definition. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing here. And let's go back to this. Okay. So we took a look at the form that they're going to use, or ask us to use for the course proposal. Let's take a look at the documentation. The coordinating board tries to provide advice. So let's see what they tell us. So section B, item 1 is the syllabus. The coordinating board tells you that the minimum elements of the syllabus are defined by Texas Administrative Code, which it is. And these are the 4 requirements you must meet for any syllabus you put together, whether it's for a core curriculum or any course whatsoever. 1, by Texas law, you must include each major course requirement. So every major assignment and examination should be on there. You must include the measurable learning outcomes for the course. You must have a general description of subject matter for each lecture or discussion, and list any required or recommended reading. This is state law. You can add more, as you know we do, but this is required by the state. So you're going to attach a syllabus to the form. You might want to do the syllabus after you've done the rest of it. Let's look at the next part. Okay, this is section B, item 2 of the form. You are going to demonstrate how the course meets all of the required core objectives, the ILOs, within its curriculum. So they say, and you'll see it here, this is coming straight from the coordinating board. It says on the form, the documentation must contain course-specific information. How do you teach? How does your college teach this particular course? How is the curriculum defined? And in what way does that curriculum address all of the ILOs? Okay, this is straight from the coordinating board. Core objectives must be incorporated and addressed throughout the course topic and curriculum. So I threw in here, what are the ILOs, right? So critical thinking, every course has to address it. Communication skills, every course has to address it. Empirical and quant, right? Manipulation, analysis, numerical data, resulting in informed conclusions. Interesting. Math, life and physical sciences, social and behavioral sciences. Teamwork, ability to consider different points of view, work effectively with others towards a shared goal. Who's doing teamwork? If you're in communication, life and physical sciences, creative arts, social responsibility. So this is intercultural competence. We've all looked at these things before. Language, philosophy and culture, creative arts, American history, government, political science, social and behavioral sciences, and then personal responsibility. The definitions are always interesting to me. Ability to connect choices, actions, and consequences to ethical decision-making. Short and sweet. And these are the component areas responsible for that outcome. Now, here's advice from the coordinating board. What should you cover in your documentation when you put that together? So 2 general pieces of advice from them. You must show how all required core objectives, all the required ones, right, are addressed. It must include descriptions of activities, how they are taught, and what is learned. And then the activities that you have in your course that address the core objectives should have accessible course-specific outcomes. Documentation must include weekly schedules of topics, readings, or artifacts studied, include grading scales for assignments and examinations. Then they had 3 little pieces of advice for specifically communication, teamwork, and personal responsibility, which suggests that people have had difficulty providing what they want to see in these areas. So here's the challenge, right? So if you have to deal with communication, it requires, and we've talked about this, right? All 4 literacy skills, oral, written, and visual literacy skills. These elements must have a substantial impact. So you have to address all 4. Teamwork. It requires students to work effectively with others to support a shared purpose or goal. And therefore, the teamwork must result in a tangible outcome. Class discussion is not teamwork, so it has to have an outcome of working together. And then personal responsibility must have been a challenge. Course-specific learning of ethical decision-making. Here's their little nod to what they must have gotten before. Routine, protocols of classroom decorum, and completion of assignments are an integral part of every college course and are not specific to the core curriculum. So just a heads up on the part of the, and then they go on, they say, and by the way, please do not include the following. They don't want to see the course description and the learning outcomes as listed in the ACGM. Don't bother. Don't tell me about it. It's not what they're interested in. Don't copy and paste. Texas core curriculum definitions of core objectives or foundational component areas. So don't quote the definition without indicating as well that the course addresses that definition. So they say instead of just copying and pasting, well, here's the definition. They say show how the particular course relates to these requirements within its curriculum, learning outcomes, and assignments. So they really want, as they said above, course-specific information, which is doable, completely doable. And then don't use those assessment rubrics used by the institution to assess the core objectives, because what they're saying here is that the rubric, providing the rubric all by itself does not indicate that the course addresses the outcomes that the rubric defines. So you need to, again, for this course, then with respect to that rubric, how are the pieces of the core objective?
Can I ask a question about this? Have these guidelines been further developed since 2014 when the revised core was first introduced? I'm wondering if when we resubmitted courses to the new core with these new core objectives, did those courses have to show all of this also? Or is this something that's kind of new?
Now, so ask that question again about submitting.
My understanding is when the core was redeveloped, I think in 2014, when those core objectives were released officially, didn't we have to resubmit all of our courses to the core? Did we have to resubmit to THECB to have the courses that we had in the core included in the new core?
I do not remember. I can check. It would be, wow, a long time.
Yeah, I thought I saw something in 2010 or before.
AC. Yes. Let me check with the AC, because they would have a record of a resubmission of everything. But I do not remember a period of time in which we were submitting documentation, new documentation for every course we had in the core. I don't remember.
That was just, it would be very, I mean, if all the courses that are currently in the core have gone through this exercise, that's
so let me look. Yeah, let me look and see what it, because I remember when, and this is a number of years ago, the whole core curriculum came under a cross-college discussion. And it may have been, and this is a long time ago, it may have been that this discussion was prompted by a requirement from the coordinating board after changing the definition for the core component areas. So let me check. That'll be in the history of the AC. That's when the AC was first put together as well. So let me see what I can find out.
Part of the struggles, with the gen ed assessment of the core objectives has been some faculty members that have courses in the core didn't fully understand how the core objectives were meant to be, a central part of the courses.
That's very true. And I think that the process for getting a course approved to the core, for the core, has, and even when long ago when we went under this huge new look at the core, this whole process, the documentation and the conversation was, they meant to be inclusive, and it was a large group. It was a cross-college group, but it doesn't always get that back to every faculty member, so that somebody has drawn this wonderful picture of this course, demonstrating how the core objectives are integrated throughout the curriculum. You throw it out to the coordinating board, they take a look at it, they say, looks great to me, and then no one ever looks at it again. So I can see how it would be easy to lose your sense of, as a core course, you have this obligation.
Yeah.
So it's something we can think about reintroducing for everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So what else? Let's go on.
So, VB Tanner, excuse me, the documentation, they want to see like artifacts, right? Key assignments for each of these component areas, and then a description of how that artifact or that assignment, key assignment, meets that
right
component area and the core objectives in that component area, so to speak.
Yeah. They want to see that that objective is woven into the curriculum of the course in a substantial way, and they want to know exactly how. What is it that you're teaching? What is it that you're having the student do? What are you having them read? What are you having them write that develops this learning outcome?
So it seems like, and just correct me if I'm wrong, I just want to get the documentation straight, right?
Yes.
if we're going to submit for Physics 1402, which is what I would like to do, we would need the syllabus, and because it's a life science, we would need the key assessment or the key assignments for those 4: critical thinking, teamwork, EQS, and communication. We would need those key assignments for those 4 areas, and that would be basically the 4 documents, so to speak, that we would attach to the application.
Yes, it would be good. And I think we can get a team together to sort of talk about the final form to help each other out on how it looks and make sure we get everything in there. But there should be a narrative. It should be something of a narrative, not just an attachment of documents.
Right.
Yeah. So within the narrative, the assignments that address each outcome, the grading rubric for the assignment. Yeah, so the key assignment should work. If you have more than the key assignment within that course that addresses that outcome, all the better.
Beth, one more thing that I noticed. In the definition for communication in the Texas Administrative Code, I just looked it up really quick, and
Okay.
It doesn't mention oral, listening skills, but I see that oral is
In the
required
Texas
here.
Administrative Code talking about the core curriculum?
Yes, in the Texas, and there's the definitions for each of the core objectives are listed in the Administrative
Really?
Code.
And what does it say about communication then?
It says communication skills to include effective development, interpretation, and expression of ideas through written, oral, and visual communication.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Let's find out. I'm making the note. We'll ask.
Thank you. I'll put the link where I am
Okay,
in the
perfect,
Administrative Code in the chat
Okay.
if anybody wants to see.
Okay. Okay, good. All right. So we're getting there. Now we're on Section B, Item 3. So this is the last of the coordinating board requirements. So there's the syllabus, right? Meet the ILOs for your component area. And this is the component area has a definition, and you must also describe how the course specifically addresses the 2 parts of the component area definition. So let's take a look at those. So it's a 2-part definition. Courses must be aligned with the focus of both parts. So for example, communication. In this category, the focus must be on developing ideas, expressing them clearly, considering the effect of the message, and fostering understanding. And then this is kind of interesting because they always avoid skills development, but they say building the skills needed to communicate persuasively. It's interesting, I think, that they say persuasively as opposed to just effectively, but anyway, persuasively. And then 2, it must also do this. It must involve the command of, here we go again, oral, written, and visual, right? Literacy skills that enable people to exchange messages appropriate to subject, occasion, and audience.
I see that listed now further down in the next heading under the foundational component areas with content descriptions. If you go to that website,
Okay.
first it lists the core objectives and does not include oral. And then if you go down further and it gets to these definitions that you're reading, the oral is in there.
Okay, so it sounds like an oversight. Sounds like
We're
an
going to
oversight.
be revisiting the communication rubric this summer.
So let's see if we can get this cleared up before we tackle that.
Yeah.
Does our rubric include oral or not? It doesn't?
No.
Okay, and I don't think we really want to. Let's see if we can get out from under that. Mathematics?
Question?
Yes.
Sorry, since we're on
That's okay.
communication, and this is just my ignorance. For letter B, courses involve the command of oral, written. This does not mean, Amanda and Julie, that the key assignment has to meet all of those, correct?
Well, that's how, correct, correct, potentially changing.
Because, I'm sitting in this seat right here, and I'm thinking that if a key assignment has to meet all 4 of those, excuse my French, but we're screwed.
Yeah, it sounds like a foreign language class, speaking, listening, reading and writing skills. I don't know how we would assess all 4 of those for every single course in the core.
The difficulty being that they say in the definition, even if we pull out oral, it is this, that, and the other.
Yes.
Not or, but and. So maybe not in the key assignment, although that would be ideal. They are saying the course should address all of these. And I don't really know.
Listening and understanding.
Yeah.
And sorry, this is just me being
you go ahead, Sarah.
Teaching, because you guys know I'm gonna let you know, right, how I feel. But now I'm looking at it from the perspective of not a chair necessarily, but a person who teaches online, and where you have to, you have online learners who might not have that hearing component. You know what I mean? Necessarily. There may be some online classes who it's just written, not mine. I have videos and animations and things like that, but so this is, or you may have students who don't hear. You know what I mean?
I think that in a situation where the student is handicapped, the requirement is waived.
Right.
But the course must be designed to
Interesting.
provide the fully functional student with development and strengthening their skills, their abilities in all of those areas, according to the way this is defined. And I think this has been a contentious argument with the coordinating board for a while. So let's see what additional clarity we can get. I think this has always been a problem. I mean, haven't we talked before, Julie, about the rubric, or isn't there something in the rubric that tries to address one communication method and then another?
Written,
visual,
oral, and visual, and there's a separate criteria for each one of those. And the trouble that we've had is that we haven't identified courses that will produce artifacts for each of those modes. And so we just kind of leave it to chance, and most of the artifacts address written communication. So we haven't collected a good sample ever for visual or oral.
And we may have failed to require what we should be requiring. So there's the ILOs, right? But I mean, with respect to gen ed outcomes, core curriculum outcomes, I think it does say all of them. So I think everyone's wrestling with it. So again, let's see what the coordinating board, how they defend this position of theirs. So let's look at life and physical sciences. 2 things, right, Sarah? One, courses in this category focus on describing, explaining, predicting natural phenomena using specifically, I thought this was interesting, the scientific method.
Can we, Julie, sorry, I hate to interrupt, VP Canner.
That's okay.
But can we get these somehow added to the catalog? Because right now, when you go to the core course listing, right, in the PAC catalog, which I'm looking at right now, right, the core curriculum selection list in our catalog, it gives communication 10, right, mathematics 20, but it doesn't give these descriptions of what these component areas are supposed to do.
I think it's a great idea that we list. So, we've been talking about making sure the student knows what it is we're asking them to learn. No reason to keep them just don't mind your pretty little heads about it. You'll know what you need to know when you get out. And if you don't know what you know, then that's okay. You'll still know it. So don't worry about it. So yes, I think it would be a great idea, Sarah, to add these definitions to the core component and the catalog.
This goes back to exactly what Joseph was talking about earlier, is the oral. Courses involve the command of oral literacy skills. And every single speech class commands that oral literacy skill.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, right, this is key. So I would love to see these added to the catalog.
I think it's a great idea. I'm sure we can do it, and I'll bet every single college would be willing to do it as well.
Sarah, that if you scroll up in the chat, I put the foundational, the component area mapping in there, and those definitions are on that component area mapping. So you can have them in hand, just FYI.
I do, but Julie, I'm going to be honest with you. I refer to the core curriculum list online in the catalog much more than going here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the chart is good, but I think it should be in the catalog. I absolutely agree that it should be in the catalog. And we could theoretically also add, although, comes a point where you're providing too much information, perhaps, providing the definition of the component area and the required objectives also. That would be like a little paragraph, right? Communication addresses these two things, and it requires learning outcomes for critical thinking, communication. What's the other one? Personal responsibility, and what's TW? I can't remember. Teamwork.
Maybe we could put a simple visual or a table or something. A table.
Something simple in the catalog. I think, thank you though, Sarah. Great idea. Okay, so, and then here, so we have language, philosophy, and culture, the two areas. If you're a course in this component area, you want to address cultural expressions affecting human experience and address an exploration of ideas found in creative products, intellectual or aesthetic, within a cultural context. So, and what are creative products? So they include philosophical thought, literature, art, film, music, or drama. So, and then they have a note for this one. This focus is not an application of methodologies. So it's not about method, right? It's about, well, how do they distinguish it? They must include intellectual or aesthetic products and the exploration of ideas found in creative products, not the methods by which they're generated. Creative arts, somewhat of the same kind of problem, appreciation and analysis of creative artifacts, interpretation and critical communication about existing works of art. It is not the production or reproduction of works of art. Okay, and then American history, two areas, consideration of past events and ideas relative to the United States with the inclusion of Texas history. Courses involve interaction among individuals, communities, states, and the nation and the world, and considering how these interactions have contributed to the development of the United States and its global role. Government and political science, focus on consideration of the Constitution, constitutions of the states, analysis of governmental institutions and political behavior, civic engagement. Okay, and then finally, social and behavioral sciences, you'd have to address these two pieces. I think it's interesting that they do emphasize empirical and scientific methods for social and behavioral sciences that investigate what makes us human and the behavior and interactions among individuals and groups and their impact on the individual, on society, and on the culture. Okay, so really, this is, oh, Patrick has just wanted to come in. And then the only other thing we have from the coordinating board with respect to their requirements, so what we've just gone through are what are their requirements? The syllabus, does your course, how does your course specifically in its curriculum address the ILOs? And then how does your course specifically within its curriculum address the two parts of the definition of the component areas? And you're done with the coordinating board requirements. That's the hard part. The rest of it is, does it transfer? Can we afford it? Does it align with the mission? Then, but let's just look at these last cautions from the coordinating board. What are they telling us to be careful about? 1, propose only general education courses. What does that mean? Well, and again, this is subjective. So this is where you have to build your argument if you're not sure that you're falling within this category or not. Courses with a specialized topic or a narrow focus are not suitable for the core because it doesn't lay a broad foundation across time, space. I feel like I've seen this on television. Foundation across time, space, cultures, and forms. Introductory courses specific to a single discipline or career have a focus that is too narrow. General education core curriculum course does not have a focus on the skill development of the individual. It has, and this is wonderful to write, it has a focus providing an academic foundation for all future learning.
This might be the difficulty for Joseph's classes, maybe number 2 and maybe 3.
Yes, you want to avoid just a narrow focus on a skill as opposed to broader philosophical habits of thought. And then upper division courses that have corresponding lower division courses are not suitable, even if the institution doesn't offer the lower division course. And then here are a couple of items we do need to pay attention to. The course must not have a prerequisite that completes the same foundational core area requirements, component area requirements. Although here's the caveat, in some cases, student placement through assessment may substitute for entry-level course prerequisites. I have a note there to see the math courses. We do have in the mathematics core component area math courses that are prerequisites for other courses in that component area. But sometimes a student may test out of the prerequisite and test directly into, say, Calculus 1. And you'd want to allow them to use that Calculus 1 for the core requirement.
This wouldn't affect that Physics 1402, correct?
Same thing. You'd have to say, and the argument has already been done for university physics 1 and 2, right? That a student could test into the second. And they've already approved it for university 1 and 2. So it's a little unclear to me how they decide whether you can test into, a student could test into the second one, maybe through AP. I'm not sure how they make that decision, but something to think about. I don't think it'll be a problem for the general university. I mean, the general physics. And then let's see, do we have anything else? That is, the co-requisite. A course must not have a co-requisite outside of the core curriculum, so that in order to get core curriculum course, they're already forced into taking this other course, which may or may not apply to their program. So you can't have a course with a co-req in the core curriculum. And I think there was one proposed, I can't remember what course it was, but the thing getting in the way is that it has a co-req, and that may kick it out of the core. And that's it. All I have here is just a summary. Wasn't that fun? Gosh, aren't you glad it's Friday? You climbed all the way up that hill, which is great. So in summary, look, choose your course, choose your component area, write up your response to how this course addresses each ILO, write up your response to how the course content aligns with the two parts of the component area definition, put together your syllabus. Does the course transfer and apply? Does the course align with the mission? Is it affordable? Submit to the curriculum committee. So easy to write down. But that's it. So, questions? Statements of exhaustion?
This was helpful for me with assessment.
Same here.
Definitely.
It was helpful for me to put it together because it really forced me to look at the core and what the coordinating board says about it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a typo on number 2.
No typos. Write up your response on the course addresses each ILO for the component area. What, this? Thank you.
So this, it's a lot of work.
It is, you'd want to sit down with a piece of paper, and I almost think it would be good and most easily done at some point with a group, right? So people who know the course, what is it that you, just look at the course. You've already got the course designed. You already know what you're asking the students to do throughout the semester. Build it as a 16-week term, and you can just do item by item. What are they reading or doing each week? And then take a look at that. Does that activity strengthen any one of those ILOs? And how does that activity relate to the definition of this component area? I would try that. I mean, there are many, many ways to address this, but I would be tempted to try that first. Just march it through and see how it may be that you've got everything you need just as you go through your existing, assignments. And then you throw it up to the coordinating board and see what they say, right? And if they don't like it and you want to try again, you might want to, if you want to change the course a little bit or redesign the curriculum to twist it a little bit into a closer alignment, you can always do that. But you could toss it in as a trial balloon. All you have to do is submit it. But if you put the paperwork together and you want to have a team of folks review it, we'll put together a team. I'll scrounge up some volunteers by being threatening, and then we'll review it.
There are 13. Wow. I think I'm going to fall out of my chair.
And it doesn't have to be done this year. It's really miserable that we're on this 1 month, right? But that's just for this academic year. You can start the process now, finish it, and give yourself some time to really think about it. Maybe, even to the point of redesigning the course a little bit, and just submit it for the next year. We can put it to the curriculum committee as soon as the paperwork is done. Then it goes over to the AC. They keep a record of all of the courses proposed that have successfully gone through the curriculum process at their college, and then they just compile them and submit them. Once every year it goes in. Maybe you give somebody some release time.
Well, I'm thinking, because because I really would like, and Patrick, I was talking to VP Tanner about adding Physics 1402, right, because of what happened during the semester last fall, right, getting the early college high school folks, you know, they were all they weren't aware that Physics 1402 wasn't part of the core, even though it's posted right in our catalog. And so then we get all these requests, you know, oh my God, we didn't know. And we're telling these high school students to take Physics 1402, but now it's going to be an elective and not part of the core. And so I really would like to add Physics 1402 to the core, but it's going to be sitting, you know, it's taking, having attended today, it's going to take more work than what, you know, yeah, it's a lot of collecting documentation and sitting down with Usha and saying, okay, how are your assignments meeting these, all of these different objectives, whether it's the ILO objectives or whether it's the core component area objectives, you know, it's all these different,
But you know what? The way to respond to that might be a crosswalk between course, and it doesn't mean that every assignment has to address each of those ILOs, but you could have a crosswalk that demonstrates through all the assignments given, and I would just walk through the assignments, right, with the faculty member, all the assignments given, say, over a 16-week course, and which of the ILOs those assignments address. And I just think that in your case, the Physics 1 is already in there. University Physics 1 and 2 are both already in there. The likelihood of it being approved is pretty high.
Joseph's area and some of the PTE faculty have worked on similar curriculum maps for their program learning outcomes, you know, where not every assignment addresses every program learning outcome, but there are some that, you know, across the scope of the whole course, all of them are addressed and assessed, introduced, you know, practiced and assessed. Amanda could show you some sample curriculum mapping templates.
And just to have a template like that might simplify the process, because then you're just filling things in.
Then you just have to explain why you put an X in that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be done by the end of April.
We'll wait till next year.
Yeah, it's a fast turnaround now for this particular submission, but the submissions go in every year. Every year.
Maybe you could do the same webinar, I don't know, during convocation or in the fall.
Yeah, we can do it again in a time when you're more ready and, you know, have enough time to face this job without worrying about not having enough time. And also, I was hoping to find examples, and I wasn't able to get any from the coordinating board, but examples of successfully completed applications for the core. So what kind of content did those faculty provide that was successful, as an example, would be helpful.
Thank you for doing this, Beth. Thanks for attending, Sarah, Joseph, April, Patrick, Amanda. I'm going to put a link to a quick survey for the webinar in the chat right now, if you wouldn't mind completing that. And we just appreciate you being here. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Opener.